going to bed at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning when the sun came up. And one thing led to another, and there was, crack was big and a bunch of other stuff. And I got involved with the wrong people. And within 6 months from the time I got to Los Angeles, I ended up in the hospital with a mild heart attack from
Mm.
what they said was probably a slight overdose. That scared the living daylights out of me. And I remember I got on my knees and I prayed to God above. I said, please help me get out of this. I don't want to go down this path, and I'll do whatever it takes. And since then, I don't do drugs. I don't drink. So remember, all new innovations usually come from outside. They come from small teams. Give me 3 people with passion and I'll build an empire. Give me a company with a lot of money and I will lose an empire.
Hi, I'm Sonia Hollins, and thanks for tuning in to Girls Talk Books. Really quick, I just want to let you know if you have an amazing book you want to share, visit Girls Talk Books and in our contact section, sign up to be on our show. Or if you want to write your own book, I've helped hundreds of authors create books. I can help you with that too. Visit girlstalkbooks.com to learn more. Thanks again for tuning in. Stacy Spikes, thank you for joining us on Girls Talk Books today.
Sonia, thank you for having me.
You are welcome. I am so excited. Darrell McMillan, who was my media director, met you in Kalamazoo a few weeks ago, and he said, I just had to have you on the show. So I'm so excited you're to join us. I read your book like, oh my gosh, I finished it in like a day. Well, that's because I had audiobook, but I was going through it with the audiobook at the same time. But it's kind of like a roller coaster. Like I'm riding this wave with you, and it's like a lot of ups and downs. So I'm really excited to dive into this with you. So I
Thank you
love it.
so much. And I really appreciate being here. Yes, it is a roller coaster of a book.
For sure, for sure. So before we get started, let's get into some things that we love to do. Usually I ask authors, what is the first book you read? What was reading like for you when you were a child?
Wow. I was a terrible reader and more from, I think things bored me.
Mm.
And believe it or not, the series that first got me hooked was Tom Swift. And so there was these Tom Swift novels, and Tom Swift was an inventor. And they had a series of books, and he used to solve problems, and he was an inventor. And I really do think that planted the seed of being an entrepreneur in my mind. I really believe that.
Okay, I love it. I've never heard of him, but I read more girly books, so I didn't get into Tom Swift. I didn't know about him, but sounds awesome. And because you are in the movie industry, which we'll talk a lot more about, what was the first movie you remember seeing? When I was a kid, the first movie I remember seeing was I think it was Bambi, but Song of the South, and it had, the guy in it, it had, Bambi and all that. I think it's called Song of the South. It may have been.
Yeah.
And that's the very first time I remember going to the movies. My cousins were older, so they took me to the movies. I'm got in front of this big screen. We had popcorn, and I was like, "This is super cool." I remember that distinctly as my very first movie I've ever saw. What do you remember your first movie that you ever saw?
It's funny. I remember it, and I had to go look up the date, and I was too young when it first came out. So it must have been a re-release, but it was the movie Dumbo. And s- since there's been a lot of Disney backlash that it's a very racist movie, but I remember that song where how did it go? Well, I didn't seen about everything because I've seen an elephant fly, right? And
Right.
and I remember that as a little kid, but that was, I think, the first movie that I ever saw.
Wow. And I think you're right. There's something about movies and music that stuck with us because it was the music in that movie that it stayed in my head.
Yeah,
And it shows you how you have not only the visual, but the hearing and this like everything, all your senses are just awakened when you're watching a really good movie. Like you
that's
can
right.
almost smell things on a screen if you're watching a really good movie. Like
Yeah.
all your senses are heightened.
Yep.
So so I love it, I love it. So we're gonna get right into it. We're gonna get right into your book because we got a lot to cover.
Okay.
So we talk about your book talks about, you growing up, your parents, you were from Houston, Texas. Your dad was a principal, I read, and your mom did some cool things. She did a public media show, which I've done before, some public media shows as well. But then at one point, you decided to move to California. What was it about you saying, "Okay, now it's time for me to go and follow my dream"? What was that pivotal moment? Like, what was that?
I saw the movie Blade Runner. I was 11 or 12. And
Mhm.
all I knew is whatever this medium was, I wanted to work in it, whether I was an actor or something, director, actor, whatever. And Ridley Scott changed the trajectory of my life. And I graduated from high school and I moved from Houston to Hollywood with no real plan at $300. And that was it. I was like, I just have to go, as we like to say in the business, I had to go join the circus.
I love it, and the thing about it is, and what I saw in your book, when I was younger, I wanted to go to New York, like, that was my dream to go work at the New York Times, like, I'm out of high school, I wanna do that. My mother was like, "No, you're not going." So, I'm glad that at least your parents let you go and you had relatives there who they felt could keep an eye on you. And one of the things I thought was super funny in your book is you mentioned that you had your clothes in a garbage bag and you had put them in your uncle's garage, and then he threw them away thinking that they were trash, and then your clothes were just going down the street in the dumpster. I thought that was hilarious.
That was my introduction to so to give a little bit of setup for that. In Houston at the time, everybody drove a truck. And so I had a little truck and so to keep room in the cab part, I took my suitcases and stuff and I put them in trash bags and I had twisties on them and I put them in the back just in case it rained. When I got to my uncle's in California, I it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and so he said, "We'll leave the garage door open for you, just come in and sleep on the couch." So I took those bags out of the back and I put them in. Well, I didn't know that it was trash night. Later, my uncle gets up, he takes the trash bags out, and I remember I'm asleep on the couch, and he says to his wife, "I saw 2 extra trash bags. I thought I had put all the trash out the night before." And she goes, "Yeah, I thought you did too." And I was like, "Trash bag." And I got up and I ran out the garage and I saw the truck going down the street with all my belongings. That was the beginning of my time in LA.
Wow, wow, that's crazy. You're
Right.
like,
They like to they like to tell that story every Thanksgiving down in Houston.
And that's sad because you're probably like, you had all your nice clothes in there and all the stuff you're gonna wear, and then it's like just going
The story gets longer and bigger and, every time.
right, you got a Rolex watch in it, like, it just gets more and more exciting every time.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things I liked about your story is you took the chance, you jumped to LA. You ended up getting with some roommates and you got into some things that you weren't, really supposed to get into. And I like that you brought that in because sometimes people tell their stories and they only share the good stuff. They only share, the positivity. But there was a one point in your life when you moved out with some friends that you had some substance issues. Talk to us a little bit about that and what was the pivotal moment that made you switch from that path?
Yeah, it was kinda scary. I thought I was being cool, I wasn't under my parents' roof, and I'm grown now, and I'm a man about the world, and I started hanging out with older people and speakeasies and, going to bed at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning when the sun came up, and one thing led to another, and there was, crack was big and a bunch of other stuff, and I got involved with the wrong people, and within 6 months from the time I got to, Los Angeles, I ended up in the hospital with, a mild heart attack from,
Mm,
what they said was probably a slight overdose. That scared the living daylights out of me, and I remember I got on my knees and I prayed to God above. I said, "Please help me get out of this. I don't wanna go down this path, and I'll do whatever it takes." And since then, I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't do anything. The Diet Coke and Bear aspirin is about the edge of where I
mhm,
go, and my life was structured different from that very terrifying experience. I've been to a lot of funerals of friends who
mhm.
went down that other path, and I think if I did, I would have joined them.
And you said you prayed, and we hear about people who their whole lives became a constant rehabilitation or people family praying for them. But for you, it's only took that one time. Why is it for you that it was just that one time where so many people, like you said, you've been to funerals, they just didn't get it? What was it for you that was like, this is it, no more?
I'd like to claim it's willpower, but I think it's God's grace. To
Mhm.
be candid, I don't think I can take credit. I think I had enough of a scare of I saw my life flash before my eyes, and I thought, seeing even rappers, whether they were getting shot or people overdosing, in the entertainment industry, you saw it all the time, and it's scary when you have something like that happen to you. You think you're invincible and
Mhm.
you wake up days later, like you've lost days and you don't know where you were, what happened. You're in a hospital and they describe to you what happened to you. And I don't, and here's my thing. It wasn't that it happened once. It had happened many times. That time it just stuck because I was like a lot of kids. You run around and think you're invincible. Well, in Houston, they used to, if you drank and drove and there was a car crash, especially it was fatal, they used to park the car on the front lawn of school so every kid coming to school could see that car. And
Wow.
I can't tell you the number of times me and my friends went out hanging out and you think you're invincible and you're not.
And you guys' car was on the lawn of the school?
No, so someone else's, but I'm saying that is the stuff that they were trying to wake us up, but yet you still think you're invincible. You're high school and you're gonna live forever.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true. It's so true. Yeah, when we were in high school, prom night, there was a fatal crash, and after that, they started these overnights after, that you just stayed there, you didn't go anywhere, it was like lock-ins. So yeah, that's interesting. And so getting into the book a little more, as you get to LA, now you said, "Okay, this is it. I'm on off this path." You started getting into the movie industry more through public relations or PR. You were doing like different things with marketing. So talk to me a little bit about that and how you got into that whole world.
Yeah, so I first got an internship at Motown. Barry Gordy had sold Motown to Universal. So
Mhm.
it left Detroit and moved to LA. So I started there as an intern, and I there was a position that opened up in the marketing department, and
Mm,
I ended up being Boys to Men's product manager. And one
mm,
thing led to another, and we all know what happened with the Boys to Men. It blew up.
right.
You got Into the Road. You got Motown Philly. You got everything, and I was right there at the right time, and things just kind of took off for me. And by the time I was 21, I had Boyz II Men, Eddie Murphy, Queen Latifah, Spike Lee soundtrack, and those are my artists. And so it was insane. I'm 21 years old. And a few years earlier, I nearly killed myself. So, acting like a fool. So God's grace was a beautiful thing.
And I love it, and I won't tell too much of the Eddie Murphy and the elevator story, but I'll get everybody to read the book. But just there are just some things, about the artist that you were learning, and one thing about meeting, like, say, meeting your heroes is sometimes it's unfortunate when you meet people and you admire them and you have those interactions with them, and it's kind of a letdown. But did that happen to you a lot when you were in Hollywood?
You know what I got to see was I got to see they were people. I got to see the
Mm,
big house, the big money meant there's staff and there's assistants and there's people and I don't know why I thought when you make it, you lie on a couch, you eat grapes, and life just kind of gets like that. But these people had insane lives and they're walking around and when you see the big shark or the whales and there's these fish all around them, these schools of fish, and this person moves, and when they move, there is a driver, and there is an assistant, and there is a publicist, and there is a second assistant sometimes, and then they're in the car and they're moving around, and that person gets out, and they're never alone, even in their own house, and there's a security guard, and all of this stuff. Like you don't realize the details, and they've got to do TV shows, and when they're doing an album release or a movie release, they have to fly all over the world, and they still need to be a parent. They still need to go to PTA meetings. They still need to be present for those responsibilities. They've got to make the movie. They got to promote the movie. They got to be working on the next one. Or in the case of Chris Rock, he's on Saturday Night Live while he's making movies, while he's being a family. And you don't realize those people walk off Jimmy Kimmel and they're sitting backstage, they're in their hair, makeup, and they leave and go straight to the airport and fly on the other side of the world and need to land in a different time zone and be promoting the movie like they just got here, right? It's
Mhm.
crazy. And so you became more forgiving or
Mhm.
understanding of what it means to be a star. There's a lot of responsibility there, and that I got to see firsthand.
You know, you say something in the book about there are people who entrepreneurs I know are 10 years ahead of the curve. They are building what is to come, not what is. And there's no way to accomplish that without trial and error. Fall down 7 times, get up 8, be teachable. And I love what you're saying because all the things that you went through, it is a teachable moment. And some things can happen up and down, but that work ethic and knowing what the dream is and knowing what the goal is and, you know, having that team around you really made urban world work, and it's just exciting to see the growth of it all from just, "Oh, we're in New York," to now, you know, have an international presence. You were the connector for a lot of those people of color who just weren't at Sundance or at the other film festivals. Why was that so important for you to create Urban World, Festival?
You know, it's funny, it kind of so what had happened was in distribution. So when you think of the movie industry, think of one part of the team makes the movies, another part of the team releases them and puts them in theaters. And so my job was to make the poster, the trailer, the ad spots, the commercials, anything that got you to go. PR is doing it freely, so they get publications to write articles or get those photos out there. Marketing is the billboard on Sunset, the advertising. I have to buy my way there. And, but I have to create all these materials that are going to convince you you need to see it and make sure the same date is on everything. And,
Right.
yeah, that
The
like that
same name spellings, right?
coming soon
Mhm,
this fall, November 15th, like, and making sure it's consistent across everything.
mhm,
So as you are that person, I wanted to somehow I was one of the few people of color in distribution. And so I always say making a movie is easy, getting people to see it is hard, right? Because when you make a movie, if you have the money, nothing prevents you from making a movie. But when you try and release a movie, you're up against, I'm tired, I want to stay at home, I'm going to watch
mhm,
Netflix. Is it worth my time? If it's worth my time, do I have the time? And if I have the time, what else is playing? And if what else is playing, how long is this here for? Only 2 weeks? Uh,
mhm,
right? You got all that going on, and I need to convince this person to go give me 2, 3, 4 hours of their time, their leisure time on a weekend, and go out to a theater and spend, if they're on a date, $100, right? So making movies is easy compared to getting people to see them. And so with all of that, I kind of backed into knowing how hard it is for our movies to get seen. And
mhm,
we weren't getting put in theaters. And there's a layer of people who determine what gets seen, and they determine who's good enough and not good enough. And so they are actually the curators of culture, and they have the ability to stop what they don't think is worth being
mm,
seen. So I was at Sundance and I said, "Why don't you guys have more black and brown movies?" They said, "Well, if they were better ones, we'd show them." But see, their idea of what was better, they might not like Tyler Perry,
right,
but we might like it, right? So
mhm,
who are you to say what and they own the theaters. And so it was, let us create our own. And so someone once said Urban World is to cinema what Showtime at the Apollo was to music.
Mm.
So when in the age when we dominated music, sure, we could be in some film as the musical interlude, but and maybe there's Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte's in a movie here and there, but we didn't have a movie industry, right? So as we were leaving music and coming into film,
Mhm.
there wasn't a curation spot for where's the best talent. So listen to these names
Mm.
I'm about to say. Ryan Coogler came through Urban World. Ava DuVernay came through Urban World.
Mhm.
Tim Story, who directed Fantastic Four, came through Urban World, and he did all of the barbershops. Malcolm Lee, the best man, came through Urban World. Um, Rosaria Dawson came through Urban World.
Wow.
Kerry Washington. Like I can keep going. If we didn't exist, I'm not saying this to be the case. I think these are all talented people and they would have found a way. But we were a launching pad for emerging talent. And if you won Urban World or you were
Mhm.
featured in one of our spotlights, it's because you're good. And then the world paid attention just like they did at the Apollo. And
Mhm.
that was our role. That was and is our role in the world.
Hi, I'm Sonia Hollins, and thanks for tuning in to Girls Talk Books. Really quick, I just want to let you know if you have an amazing book you want to share, visit Girls Talk Books and in our contact section, sign up to be on our show. Or if you want to write your own book, I've helped hundreds of authors create books. I can help you with that too. Visit girlstalkbooks.com to learn more. Thanks again for tuning in. As I'm listening to your story and I'm learning more about you, I'm like, wait a minute, let me back up. This dude didn't even go to school. He didn't go to school for marketing, advertising. I'm looking like, where do I see his degree? I don't even see, like, you just got in there and you just start killing it. Like, what was it? How is your brain working where you're knowing marketing? People are hiring you, people are having you, you have these multi-million dollar companies. Like, what is it about Stacy that made you who you are? What is in that secret sauce? What is going on with you? Because 'Cause I'm just, like, in awe that you don't say, "Well, I went to Yale and Harvard and learned this from Berkeley." You just start jumping in there and doing it. Like,
You know, I I think it was growing up black in America. I think that,
mm,
you know, you see my dad had 2 or 3 jobs, my mom had 2 or 3 jobs. You know, we didn't have a nanny. You had to it was I had my first job was at 11 years old. I remember my mom got me a job during lunchtime. I was a cashier. They wanted me to learn that early. I was a cashier at lunch. So when you came with your tray, I had to ring everybody up and give them change. And my first job was literally
mm,
in the cafeteria of my middle school, which, by the way, Beyonce and I went to the same middle school
I know, I
and
read that. That was awesome.
and
Mhm,
the thing about that was if you start somebody out at 11 and they are then I worked at Target and then I don't remember not working. So
mm,
the entrepreneurial hustle, and if you wanted something, they didn't give you the money for it. I used to collect comic books. I had to earn my money from my comic books. I had to earn my money for anything I wanted. So I think there was a hustle there. And then the other thing, and I tell everybody whenever I get a chance to speak, read
mhm,
as many biographies as you can.
mhm, mhm.
And I remember when I got to LA, one of the first biographies I read was The Rise and Rise of David Geffen. And those of you who don't know, David Geffen was a music promoter who owned Geffen Records. And he had Nirvana, he had Pearl Jam, he had Cher, he had all of these huge 80s and 90s acts, 2000. There was this in David Geffen's book, he talked about getting a job in the mailroom, being first in delivering the mail, being the last one to leave. And the mailroom gave him insight into who was powerful. And he saw the agents and he wanted to be an agent. And he then got on one of the agent's desk. Then he became a junior agent. Then he became an agent. Then he went to an agency. And it kept going and going and going, and that's how David became David Geffen, and I think Cher was one of his when Cher went solo, she was one of his artists, and I would read everybody in the entertainment book. I would read, uh, I can't remember the Lou Wasserman, it's his book is called The Last Mogul. I read he was the one who founded Universal and started Steven Spielberg. I read every book, and what those people did in their books, I did. When they said they showed up first at work and left, I'll tell you a quick story. I say this in the book, but when I read that David Geffen he talked about being first one there and getting the boss's coffee and making sure they had whatever they need, and he would even meet them at the car. I remember going downstairs and meeting Gerald Busby, the CEO. I remember carrying up he would get out of his car, there wasn't an assistant there to help him. I remember making sure I was there when he came in the morning, and when he needed to leave, I was like, I got your bags, I got your stuff." That's how I got the position for Boys to Men, because
Mm,
Arrow literally said, "There's a new spot open, kid, you should go check it out. Imma call Tracy down the hall, and we're gonna give you a
mm,
shot, but if you don't work out, we're gonna fire you. You can count on me, sir. I'll get it done," right? So, that's what I it's the hustle.
mhm.
It's the hustle, don't talk about that degree on the wall. Nobody ever asked me about a degree. It was like, "Oh, no one cares."
Wow, I love it. I love and I think that's so important because what we teach kids I mean, me being a journalist, we had to have that hustle. You have a timeline, get a story, get it done. Now it just seems like you have to have that hustle if you wanna make it because there's so many more people out there. Now there's technology, now there's people more people can see you, like, you have to have a hustle mentality to make it, but at the same time, I wonder if that hustle is also hurting some young people because if they feel they don't have that hustle, then they become the watchers and not the doers. You know what I mean?
World has always been that way. There's
Mm,
the world, Christopher Columbus, when you go back and you read Christopher Columbus, Christopher Columbus was a tech founder. And let me explain what I
mm,
mean. Sailing ships to the edge of the world where they thought you would fall off was a new technology. And navigating was a new technology. Sailing, he had to raise money to go on an adventure. So he had to raise capital from venture capitalists
mm,
and told them about a land of gold, and he needed to bring the money back and make money for them. And that's what entrepreneurs do. And he went around and he went to different governments, different countries to raise money. And he said, I'm going to India, or there was a land that they imagined. No one had been to this place. They had only heard rumors of it. Well, that's what entrepreneurs are doing. There's a promised land of riches and gold, and they're going to make money for their investors, right?
mm.
And so, who wakes up in the morning, don't have a job, you need to go raise millions of dollars. You need to convince a bunch of people to sail with you to the edge of the earth where they believe the earth was flat and you were going to fall off.
Mhm.
You need to sail with me to the edge of the earth. There's some gold out there. We need to get it and bring it back. That is what an entrepreneur does.
Right? But I wanna get on to something because I know you've been doing some other cool things like, the Mogul, the new Mogul project. Tell us a little bit about that. That's so exciting.
Yeah. So when we relaunched MoviePass, we were thinking, all right, you constantly need to reinvent yourself, and what's the new direction? And kind of what I would call our iPhone moment was
Mhm,
we started thinking about how do you take the passion of people who love movies, how do you take that passion and bottle it up? And what we looked at was the sports industry for a long time had things like FanDuel and DraftKings and MGM Bet, and where people who like to trash talk about their teams, and well, people are the same way about movies. Are you Marvel or DC? Are you Taylor Swift or Beyonce? Are you, and people like to to talk trash and say, "Oh, that movie's gonna bomb."
Mm,
No, it's not. It's gonna make $100 million this weekend. Well, we wanted to create a hub where people could put their money where their mouth is and
mm,
be able to do that in a central place because it doesn't exist. It exists for sports fans, but it doesn't exist for movie fans. And people go to the movies 10 times more than all sporting events combined. In a single weekend on one major motion picture, more people go to the movies than all NFL games together. One movie.
mm.
So if that's the case, where's the home for all these people who want to who's going to be the next James Bond? Who's going to win the Oscar? Who's going to take home the Independent Spirit Awards or the Golden Globes? No, there is no one place for that. And so given that we're a fan built community, we wanted to take that passion and give it a place that was if Movie Pass lets you save money and reduce friction, Mogul lets you potentially make money. So let me tell you how it works. The game gets you pay into it, you get a salary cap of say $1 million. You'll buy the movies you want, the actors you want, and the directors you want. And then your portfolio and my portfolio are competing. So let's take season one is going to be this fall season. And in season one, the portfolio who performs the best at the end of the year takes the pot. And that's
Mm,
basically how it works. So there's weekly sprints. And so the season's around 12 weeks. So you have October through the first week in January. And then um, you can win weekly. And then at the end, whoever the top three, they'll take home the whole pot that everybody put in. But you need
wow.
to know what's gonna be good and what's not, what's gonna bomb. And what's tricky is it's not how much the movie grosses, it's how much the movie makes based on how much it costs to make. So you're playing it on the net, not on the gross, because if not, everybody would pick the big tent poles.
Right.
If I pick Wicked and Wicked cost 200 million to make, but it makes 400 million, I only 2x my money. But if you picked that independent film Honora that won the Oscar last year, Honora cost 6 million to make, but it made 60 million at the box office. So you 10x your number. You were more profitable than I was.
Hmm.
So that's how
Okay.
the game is played. And DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports, is in US alone an $11 billion a year business, and no one has built anything like it for the movie and entertainment industry.
Wow, this is huge. And it makes you excited because you are and it makes the movie maker excited because now they're seeing people are paying attention to them. They're watching what's going on. They're rooting for them.
That's
And
right.
it even makes them up their game too, because then you start looking at why are people grading me or a certain way in addition, to that. Like, do they think we're going to be successful? Do they feel our topic maybe isn't what everybody wants to see? So it even makes as you make movies, it's making you start to think, what are the trends? What's going on where I have to make a movie that people are going to want to get behind? Or maybe the challenge is, let me see how little I can make this movie for, and then, then get on that. So it's so many different variables in that, and I love it. And I don't want to keep you too long 'cause I know you got other things to do, but I love the fact that you said the United Nations invited you to talk and something it said imagination leads to innovation. Seeing is believing, how media and sentiment influences business and culture. It's like imagination leads to innovation. It's like your mind, Stacy's mind sees something and imagines it, and then it happens. So I really love that. Why tell us about the United Nations connection with you and why they felt you were important.
Yeah, that was really a trip. That was one of those things where I got an invite and I thought they actually had made a mistake. The United Nations realized there's a certain thing about the fact that when people see behavior in a movie, they emulate that behavior. And what they realized is they wanted the entertainment industry. to start to work in climate and green initiatives, to work in because what they found was when an emerging technology gets emulated, it has liftoff. Mobile phones, Bluetooth with earpieces, using when Christopher Nolan in Tenet uses the windmills from the sea farm, using examples, and so we ended up having a whole conversation about helping to put more of those activities. They were like, have an artist do something in the script, um, have them do certain things that helps with this adoption. Have them drive an electric car. Have them
Mhm.
pull up and charge their car, or show a solar grid on top of their home. Have them talk about something. And so they asked us in very subtle ways to help put this into
Hmm.
our art because it does impact adoption and when people see something in a movie. So what I did was I was part of that, showing the data of how you can have what we call liftoff, technology liftoff, when people see a cool person or someone who they respect doing it and using the technology in a very cool way. You see your lead actor drive an electric car and it goes really fast and the car is smart, then people say, "Ooh, can I get one of those?" And so it plays an important part in the future of our world and how people are dealing with emerging technologies.
King had a dream and you have a dream too. The next generation of content creators. Tell us about what that looks like for you. What is your dream for these next generation of content creators?
I want to see. We don't own anything, and Ryan Coogler deal regarding Sinners is the beginning of a change where creators own things. Because what happens is if you have a library and that reoccurring library happens, that library can service many generations. Think about even some of the public domain stuff. Think about books like Swiss Family Robinson or books written in the 1800s. And once they go into public domain, but still, those books serve families or music serve families, and we don't own our work, and we work for a infrastructure that then owns us. And my dream for creators is to be able to create a world where through digital rights and a community. So here's a simplification. I want you to imagine Brooklyn financed Jay-Z. Just the people who knew his first album, Brooklyn financed it. Now, he did it he does it through digital currency. And he can tell because everyone did it in crypto, they can see who put money in. They're able to through smart contracts to give money back to those people.
Mm,
Now, let's take that second album. Let's take Blueprint. Blueprint's coming out. He's going to let the people who invested in the first album invest in the second album first, raise a certain amount of money, and he's going to let them rev share in that. Okay. Where do you think that money goes? That money comes back to Brooklyn. Here's how the system works. Jay-Z does a deal with Def Jam. Def Jam has a deal with Universal. Universal
mm,
owns those assets, and the money doesn't go to Brooklyn, the money goes to Burbank. So the community that gave birth to these artists doesn't benefit from its creation. The money is extracted from the community and goes
mm.
to Burbank. And that's the dream I have, is to create a system that allows artists, filmmakers, and the like to build multi-generational wealth off of their work rather than it being extracted and they live in a form of indentured servitude that they ultimately never own anything and never benefit from their own wealth creation.
I love that. I love that. That's definitely a dream we want to get. I met a lady who dad helped produce, what was her name? Oh my gosh. Uh, her picture's in my head. Nina Simone.
Nina
And
Simone,
she's
oh
like,
yeah.
"Oh, we're still getting royalties off of her." And I'm like, "Yeah, but"
Young, gifted, and black.
right. and they're still getting royalties off of it, and they're not Black. So,
Yeah.
but anywho, so let's wrap up real quick. So we have this has been a great conversation. We can go on and on and on, but I know you got to go places and we got to wrap it up. But I want to end because you are a storyteller and you're in the media and all that, and you know how to tell a story. So we're gonna end with your once upon a time story for this interview. So let's hear
Okay.
it. Mhm.
I wrote it down. Let's see if I can get it all right. Once upon a time, a boy named Stacy loved to watch movies. Every day, almost every day, he would sneak out of his house and go see movies in the theater. One day, he left his home in Houston to move to Hollywood. Because of that, he got to go behind the curtains and see how everything was made and done. Because of that, he was able to work with some of the biggest names in the industry. And ultimately, he created his own company that changed how people experience the movies all around the world.
Yay! I love it. I love it. Well, thanks again for joining us on Girls Talk Books. We'll share your information. Is there anything coming up pretty soon that you want people to know about or look out for?
The one thing we talked about, if you didn't see it, was
Mhm.
HBO made a documentary about the crazy Movie Pass story called Movie Pass Movie Crash. It was nominated for an Emmy. It's a fun watch. If you're an entrepreneur, please watch it so you can learn from some of my mistakes. And then we have Mogul coming, so stay tuned for that. And that URL is mogul.moviepass.com. And look out, and we'll see you around the block and see you at the movies.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Again, we have Stacy Spikes, the movie past millionaire, billionaire guy. So thank you again. Your amazing book, Black Founder, The Hidden Power of Being an Outsider is amazing. And if you are busy, you don't have time to read it, there is the audiobook that you can do as well. So you have no excuse. Check it out, everyone. And again, Stacy, thanks again for joining us on Girls Talk Books. Take care.
Sonia, thank you so much.
Mhm. Hi, I'm Sonia Hollins, and thanks for tuning in to Girls Talk Books. Really quick, I just want to let you know if you have an amazing book you want to share, visit Girls Talk Books and in our contact section, sign up to be on our show. Or if you want to write your own book, I've helped hundreds of authors create books. I can help you with that too. Visit girlstalkbooks.com to learn more. Thanks again for tuning in.